Welcome to Your Writing Process. In this particular video, I want to emphasize the word your in it because we're going to really spend the next few minutes reflecting on how you understand your own process and your own writing habits. If we can understand our own writing process, we can better affect the outcomes of that process. This means that we're really going to reflect on the strengths that you bring to the table with regards to your writing process. We're also going to begin reflecting on the areas where you feel you would like to focus in with regards to strengthening different parts of your writing process. And the nice thing about this is that as we move through our course, those strengths and areas to strengthen will begin to shift. You're going to begin to see a difference, even where it's you feel more comfortable in certain spaces with regards to your writing that perhaps you didn't before. So in order to prepare for this video, go ahead and stop the video and make sure that you have all of the necessary things that you need in order to take effective notes. While we are an online class, it is important to make sure that you are still infusing those critical strategies for taking notes and gathering the materials that you need in order to best understand the content. So whether that's a paper or pen, pencils, highlighters, or if you like to take notes digitally where you have your screen split and the video is on one side and a note document, Word document, Google Doc on the other side. So go ahead and stop the video just to make sure you have those things ready, and then we can begin. So before we really get into the main portion of this particular video, I want to take a couple of minutes and talk about the benefits of taking notes. We hear it all the time. You get constantly being told, make sure you take notes, make sure you write this down. But one of the things that we may not consider is really the benefits of taking notes. So let's go over a couple of those for just a couple minutes. One benefit is concentration. If you are taking notes, if you are intentionally and purposely writing something down, actively writing something down, it helps you to concentrate on what's being discussed throughout the content or the lesson. It also keeps you active versus passive, so you can better understand the concepts that are being covered. It acts as a way to remember. So by just writing something down, it means that you have reinforcement. You immediately receive the information twice, not just once. And you do that through the fact that you see the information, you're hearing the information, and then you're moving or kinesthetic, doing something with the information. So even the act of writing something down, whether it be you are typing it into a keyboard or with a highlighter or with a pen or with a pencil, it is actually hitting all of those different learning styles because you're seeing it, you're hearing it, and then you're doing something with it. It does act as a referral for future studying. Many times we believe we're going to just remember, we won't forget that. We had this big discussion, there's no way you can forget. And then as soon as we start going about the rest of our day, we notice that some of those things that we thought we'd remember have slipped a little bit. So the best defense against that is just to go ahead and write it down in the moment. That way you can go back to it a little bit easier. Finally, the last piece is that it really does act as a way to revise because you're starting with something versus nothing. So even if you have jotted down words or phrases or even created a visual map for yourself, it's something to work from. So that means that when you're taking that information and you're asked to do something with it, or let's say you're incorporating it into some research that you're doing, you've got something to start with. You're extracting it from one place and putting it in another, and you're also putting it in words where and phrases and visuals that make sense to you. So with all that said, whatever strategy you use in order to take notes, kind of keep these benefits in mind. It might help for you to connect to the idea of taking notes a little bit better. As we move forward, we just have a few guiding questions for this particular video that I want us to think about as we go. The first one is, how do you define writing? We're going to get into that in just a second with regards to a reflection, but I want you to think about, how do you define writing? How would you best describe or define your writing process? And then how would you describe your views or attitudes towards writing? We're going to dive into each one of these three. Now, that first question, how do you define writing? We're going to be doing that throughout the course of our semester. We're going to be thinking about what we consider to be writing. What is it now? What was it? Um, and we're going to do that through the opportunity to write through a lot of different genres, some of them in the digital sense. So we'll be circling back to that particular question throughout the semester. And really what we're doing in this first video is to think about metacognition, which is just a fancy way for saying we're going to think about our own thinking. And you're going to hear me say that a lot this semester. You're going to hear me especially say that word reflect that you see in this cycle, because we want to understand how we go about doing the task of writing, or really doing the task of anything. So if you look at this cycle, when we receive a task or when we have something going on, and in our case it will be a writing assignment, we're going to begin to think about or assess the task. What is it asking me to do? What do I need to think about? What do I need to prepare? What do I need to research? It also allows us then to evaluate those strengths and weaknesses. So we start to think about some of the project management pieces that you might do in order to be successful in a particular task. You then think about planning your approach. How is it that you're going to actually accomplish this task? What is that process you're going to go through? You're then going to apply that approach, apply those strategies, and once they're applied, you'll reflect on them. So you start thinking about, well, how did that go? What worked? What didn't? Where are my strengths? What do I need to look for towards the future as we move forward? So if you notice, this is in a circle. It's a never-ending cycle, this metacognitive cycle, because we are constantly reflecting on and growing, capitalizing on our strengths, celebrating those strengths, and then looking for those moments or spaces where we would like to improve. So I say the word writing, and you say what? I want you to take a few minutes, and in the first part of your reflection, I just want you to jot down a few sentences that would answer these two questions. The first one, how would you define writing? Just how would you put it in your own words? Don't Google any of this. How do you personally define writing? And then, how would you describe your views or attitudes towards writing? So stop the video and take a few moments and just reflect on these two questions very informally on whatever you're using to take notes. Most of us have a love-hate relationship with writing. We have those moments where we've written something, we're super proud of it. We're just excited about the process we just went through. We can't wait to get feedback from this particular piece, whether it be from an audience member, someone intended to read your writing, whether it be for a particular grade. And then we have those moments where writing becomes our worst enemy. You're staring at either a blank screen or a blank page, and you just can't even imagine putting that first word down. So, in order for us to kind of parse through this love-hate relationship, or how we might better be able to affect that love-hate relationship, we want to think about the process we use when we write for any reason. In this particular case, you might want to zero in on, or the context that you might want to use is your writing process when you're asked to write a larger piece, an essay, a paper of some kind. And in order to do that, we want to think about a couple of things. We want to think about what your writing habits are, how you accomplish the task. And so in order to kind of think about this, I'm going to use my story real quick. When I think about my writing habits and how I accomplish the task, um, I am someone who likes to write very early in the morning. That's where my brain is the freshest, um, ready to go. So I am an early riser, 4 or 5 a.m., and I am really productive till about noon before I start to taper off a little bit. When I write, I like to have a particular playlist in my head. It is a meditative playlist. It is one I've used for years, so I'm very familiar with the music, and so it offers me a little bit of a peripheral um, piece so that I can focus in on what I'm writing. So it's not a distraction, but it's just enough to help me focus. I use my computer when I draft, when I get to the point where I'm actually drafting down something. But I also have my journal and sharpened pencils, and it's very particular, my sharpened pencils. And I am a Starbucks writer. I like to go to Starbucks. There's one particular corner at the Starbucks I go to that I like to sit at where it's comfortable. My plug is there. I am facing out so that I can again get some peripheral distractions because it helps me focus. So I have to put all of these pieces together when I am ready to really sit down and draft or write that first piece. So now I want you to kind of think about your writing habits. And when you do, I want you to think about this. When do you like to write? What time of day? Do you focus more on the weekends? Are you every single day? Are there certain days, times that you like to write? Where do you like to write? Is there a particular location that you find most comfortable or most productive? And then how do you like to write? So if you think about all of those things, those weird things I have to have in front of me with regards to sharpened pencils and my journal and my computer, um, and some kind of beverage, coffee or water sitting next to me as I write, I want you to reflect on those same things. So go ahead and stop the video again and take a few minutes and really think about your writing habits to begin to put together the picture of your writing process. So now that you've got a couple of reflective pieces down there, I want to talk just a little bit about what this might mean with regards to how we understand writing or the writing process. And this particular infographic really does a nice job of kind of contextualizing how I would love for you to walk away with, or what I would love for you to walk away with regards to understand writing. And that is this: writing is a wonderfully chaotic recursive process that is socially constructed. So what I mean by that is it is something that happens as a result of our lived experiences or things that we encounter, right? It doesn't happen in isolation or in a vacuum. Writing happens because um, we live in or have these experiences in our world. We also understand that writing is not linear. It doesn't start with one particular section of the process and end with another. And while we have identified these different processes or different steps in the process, like pre-writing, drafting, revising, editing, and publishing, as you can see, these arrows demonstrate that that happens in this nice back and forth motion, right? So it says the writing process is not linear. It doesn't move straight from pre-writing to publishing. Sometimes you have to brainstorm again for ideas. Hemingway wrote 14 drafts of one paragraph in The Old Man and the Sea. Revision may be needed even after you've published. You may need to edit again if your writing has changed. The writing process is cyclical and recursive. So we're going to have those moments throughout, especially in this first writing assignment, where we're going to approach this together in pieces. And you're going to see where you're going to draft different parts of it, and you're going to be in different drafts for, let's say, the body of your first paper, than you will be for the introduction and conclusion. And it's just to get an understanding that when we write, we want to make sure that we are flexible in the way that we write. Sometimes we feel like we have to, one, get it down perfectly the first time. That's a lot of pressure. And when you put that much pressure on yourself, how are you ever going to write in a way that makes you feel comfortable if you're not comfortable with the fact that when we write, we've got to take those drafting moments and really, really enjoy them. So as you move forward, keep that reflection, keep what you wrote down um, with you because we're going to loop back into it several times, not only in this module, but moving forward. I want to thank you for watching. This video is always available, so you can go back, take a look at it again if you need to. If you are ready and you've got your reflections written down, you can head back over to Canvas and continue in this week's module. Thank you. We'll see you online.